happening all over the country. Florida, Turner had stirred that up so many times. I believe it changed leadership 3 times. Oregon, the same thing happened. Now, while all of this was going on, I'm asking myself, okay, how? How is he going to try to monetize the natural resources of this nation? As I said before, the nature of my job with the company I work for in the real world makes me aware of how the securitization and the world of monetization and all of that nasty money at the top with 40 zeros, etc., takes place. And I know that in the trading platforms, you've got to be able to fill out and have accepted compliance packages. And they're very detailed, they're very large, the regulations are extremely tight on them, and it's just not that simple. Somebody like Turner would not have the capability of pulling that off for himself. And nobody else that I had uncovered or come to know in any way in the national level were capable of it either. They didn't have the background, they didn't have the education, and they certainly wouldn't know how to pull it off. So it was really bothering me. And one night I went to sleep thinking about that. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, oh my God, I think I know what it is. All summer long, I had been aware of a man referred to sometimes by the name of Aaron and sometimes by the name of Little Brother that Turner was hiding. And Billy and the Unbroker were trying to get in touch with this guy. And Turner kept moving him and hiding him. And I had heard about it, but I didn't really ask any questions. I didn't know who the guy was. I didn't know what his purpose was or, even why Turner was hiding him, and I didn't really care at the time. But then I thought, wait a minute. Those two, because I knew his wife was with him, and those two have got to have something to do with this. So as soon as it got late enough in the morning, I called Billy, and I put him on the spot. And I said, all right, I'm going to ask you a question, and you had better tell me the truth, because I'm going to know if you're lying. And I want to know who exactly Aaron, Little Brother, really is, because I know his name isn't Aaron, and I know his name isn't Little Brother. Who is he, and what is he doing there? And Billy's answer was, well, I only know his name's John Michael, but I don't know his last name. And he's there because he's a paperwork expert with banking. So I thought, okay. Then my governor, ex-governor, got him on the phone. And I said, we need to find out who this guy is and what his expertise is and why he's hiding. I knew he was hiding from the feds, but I had no idea why. So my governor said he would search the FBI records, and I called the U.S. Marshals. I gave them the man's name. I asked them if they had any wanteds on him, and I gave him whatever information I had about the guy. He said no, he had nothing on there, but that if I could get a better description of him, physical description, that would help him narrow it down. Meanwhile, my governor sent me a Skype, and he said, could it be this one? And I went and I looked, and I said, I don't know, but I know he has a wife, and she's hiding out too. So I looked on the FBI. This was on the FBI most wanted list for white-collar crime. And the man's name was John Michael Dimitrian. And his wife, too, was listed on the most wanted criminals, Julianne Baldueza Dimitrian. And it lists there why they are on the most wanted list. They were both wanted because they did not show up in court on July 6th for sentencing after being arrested and busted by the SEC for massive mortgage fraud. And they were out of Hawaii. Well, everything fit, but I wasn't going to make it that easy. I knew that the broker and Billy both knew this man. They had met him. They knew him. So I sent them each pictures, not just one picture, but several pictures that I took off the FBI most wanted list, and they all looked similar. They were of Asian descent and coloring and approximate same height and weight, etc. And I said, do you see John, Michael, little brother, or Aaron among these pictures? And both of them identified John Michael Demetrian and Julie. So I knew then who they were. That's when I started digging more. And I discovered that Turner was hiding them out at various buddies' places there in Alabama. Warren Palmer's house was one of them. A gentleman by the name of Jimmy Graham had donated a motor home to move him around in. I then called the Hawaii FBI, talked to the agent in charge of the case, told him where they were, and he contacted Alabama. I talked to both Alabama FBI offices. I got the real heebie-jeebies from the Alabama FBI. I don't trust those boys for a second. And then, after that, I exposed it on my blog, who they were. I also exposed who Tamapuna was on my blog. So now we have 3 criminals. And that is exactly how he was figuring to get into those accounts for George Bush with the 5-Star Trust. He didn't know at that time that it takes a whole lot of signatures to access any of those accounts now. They have been seized back from the thieves. But anyway, he had his paper hangers, as it were, and Julie is a graphic expert, so she was real good at creating the phony documents, etc. And they were using Jesus Barrios to drive them around. And they also went to Utah that weekend. So I also got a call from a gentleman in Utah who was at that event and told me he met them, but he didn't know who they were at the time. Well, now Turner had a problem. I had exposed it. Too many people had met them. And he needed not to be able to, or to be drug into it all, and he's trying to cover his butt real quick. So about 3 weeks after, that was March 1st, I believe, right around March 1st, that I exposed that. By the end of March, shortly after there, he wrote out and sent out a letter claiming that he never knew that they were criminals and that they were the ones who had stolen the ID machine and all of the money, along with Jesus Barrios. Now, you need to know, Jesus Barrios, Tamapuna, and both of those Demetrians never had access to any of that money. There was no way they had access to the accounts for the money from the IDs. Then I got a hold of, somebody paid $65 for Kelby Smith's court records out of California. There were 23 lawsuits on there, and he was sued all those times for mortgage fraud and dealings.
Yep.
He lost, I believe it was 7 business licenses. Those documents will also be available, and you can count up for yourself.
Yeah.
And I decided to look up his...
Terry?
Yeah?
Terry, we've got to go to another break. I have my guest, Terry, with us, covering our last RuSA Exposed for Freedomizer Radio. So, Terry, go ahead.
Okay. Now, the issue of the IDs. I had been approached. I had the FBI visit me in my home, and they were only interested in two things. So this is Georgia FBI. So they wanted to know about the Demetrians course, but mostly they were concerned about the fake IDs and any possible violence coming out of this group. I went to great lengths to make it clear to them that these people were not dangerous to anybody but themselves, and would most likely shoot themselves in the foot if they were going to shoot anybody, and they were not a violent threat of any kind. I told him it was, that they were just Kool-Aid drinkers and following this phony messiah, and I explained to them everything that they wanted to know about the IDs. I had seen them. Turner kept claiming that he had bought some big machine to make these IDs. Well, what you need to know out there, a machine that makes that type of ID, a legal, lawful ID that you can use for a driver's license or a passport or diplomatic immunity, whatever, is going to have security strips in it, an RFID chip in it. It's going to have some tracking capability in it. The machines that print those types of IDs, you've got to have top level clearance security to be able to buy one of those. Those machines are accessible by banks and mints, Secretary of State for making driver's licenses, etc. Not just anybody can go out and get one of those machines, and certainly not Turner. Then I looked at the IDs. They were well done. It was good artwork, but they were nothing more than good card stock and a cheap laminator. So I decided to Google the latest address for Kelby's latest business that he had listed on that document, court document, and lo and behold, it had Google Earth zoom in so you could see the building and what it was shared with. And that was a little printing company, like a mom and pop operation of a Kinko's. So then I knew there was no machine. They had a heck of a scam going there with what they were charging for those IDs. And at about that time, I got a phone call from a man and his wife who had bought the last fake ID Turner had been selling, the Ambassador ID, this quite some time ago, and he was charging $1,000 a piece for those. Him and his wife had tried to use one when they got pulled over, and they had also been involved in some of the seminar stuff that Turner had been teaching, and really ticked off the judges around there. And so they got arrested, and they were never booked. They were just bounced around, like my friend Bob in South Carolina, from jail to jail without charging them. And while they were in jail, the feds went in and took their home and their cars and all their clothes and everything they ever owned. And when they were finally released, still with charges against him, federal charges, they were homeless. No money, nothing, nowhere to go. They tried to get help from Turner. He refused to even speak to him. They ended up calling Billy in Alabama because they remembered his number. And he called me, and he said, we have to help this guy. I had a conference call with the man, and I do have that recording. I'm going to listen to it. If he doesn't identify himself by name, I'll make that recording available on the website as well. But anyway, I realized that the whole thing was a scam, once again, like all the other ones. And the people, I had also been approached by people all over the country that had been involved in this bank scam that Turner was pushing, saying that him and this other guy out of Washington were buying a bank, and he collected money from people